Evening, everybody. My name is Adam. I'm going to show you my somewhat simplified method. I hope it's a simplified method of making a crusty bread at home. I've laid out some of the things you're going to need, and hopefully these are all the things you'll need, except maybe our lovely oven in the background. So our technique for doing this bread is we will make a starter dough that we will then perpetuate, and we will build it. It's sort of like a sourdough culture, but it's not really a sourdough culture because it's based on a commercial yeast. But that's the idea. We'll take a piece of it, make dough, bake that, we'll feed this little piece again, and then when we're ready, we'll take a chunk and make more bread. So first let me run through the equipment that you will need for this. The first thing you're going to need is a small bowl. If you've got something with a lid, that's great. That's what we're going to make our starter dough in, and that's what we're going to keep our starter dough in. The next thing you will need is a large bowl. I like these big, wide, kind of shallow relative to their volume stainless steel bowls. They're easy to get. It's easy to get down in the bottom with a dough scraper. So those two things are essential. The third thing that is absolutely essential is a good digital scale, preferably one that will read in metric. I've got one of those right here. Not essential but nice to have is a flexible plastic dough scraper. These are about 50 cents at your average restaurant supply store. Wooden spoon if you don't like to mix stuff actually with your fingers. I usually don't use these, but you can use it if you want to. In terms of a baking vessel, we like these ceramic earthenware kind of baking dishes with a lid. They work really great. You can use a baking stone if you've got it. Dutch ovens work okay. I don't really use those, so I couldn't help you troubleshoot that. But anyway, we won't need this tonight. I just wanted to show that to you. I believe that's a 6-quart. And it'll do one. The recipe I'm going to show you will do one loaf in that. Finally, last tool that is critical is a sprayer bottle of clean tap water. And yes, that's a tool, not an ingredient. I'll get to that, maybe not in this video, but we'll post at least one more video, and I'll show you how that works because it's real handy. In terms of ingredients, the things you will need to make this bread are, of course, bread flour. This is something we picked up at Costco. I usually prefer to use an unbleached bread flour. Nobody's got unbleached bread flour right now because we're in the middle of the pandemic. So we're going to go with this. I've used a similar product in the past with good results. Not for this particular application, but I'm confident it will work just fine, and that's what I've got scooped up into this container here. I also have some bottled water. I prefer to use spring water if I can get it. If not, filtered tap water is okay, or previously boiled tap water. You just want it at room temperature. I don't like it any warmer than that. And finally, for the starter, you'll need some active dry yeast, and we will need very little of that, but basically a heavy pinch, and hopefully we won't need any more. And then finally, the last ingredient is finely ground salt. That's some Himalayan pink salt. It doesn't have to be that. Probably the easiest finely ground thing to get is actually canning and pickling salt, which I also like to use for baking. So, to get started, not to make a bad pun, I'm going to put my bowl on the scale, and if you'll come around here so I can show the operations of the scale. So this scale, the important thing to understand about it, I'm going to let it power on, make sure it's reading in metric. I'll put my bowl on. You should have a 0 or a tare button, and the 0's out the weight. So that's your starting point. And the important thing to realize about this recipe is you want to maintain the following ratio. The amount of water should be 75% by weight of the amount of flour in the recipe, okay? You maintain that ratio in the starter dough, and you maintain that ratio in the final dough, and that's the important thing to maintain. So the starter the size starter that I like to maintain is 200 grams of flour and 150 grams of water. So that's that maintains your 75% ratio. And then I put in just a pinch of yeast. So what I'm going to do at first, and I'm sorry if I'm talking, my math skills go completely out the door. So I'm going to do is if you'll come back around here so they can see the measurements, I'm going to measure off 150 grams of spring water into my bowl. And you want to get it as close as you can. If you go over a couple of grams, that's not a big deal. I actually hit that right on the money. Awesome. I'm going to add just a pinch of yeast. And I like to let that, and you can see that's a very tiny amount, and that's literally like, maybe 2 big pinches. But you can see when it scatters on the water, it's a very, very, very small amount. And I like to put that in the water first and let it hydrate. It'll activate a little quicker. The salt we're going to set aside. We're not going to use any salt in the starter dough. We will in the final, each time we make a final batch of dough. So I'm going to let that sit for just a second. Let me swirl it with my finger. You can see it's turned the water kind of cloudy. Swirl it a little more. Sometimes those things take a little, they've got kind of an outer coating on the granules. It takes them a little bit to wake up. Okay, that looks good. That looks like it's ready to rumble. Now I'm going to take my flour, if you will pardon me for a moment. Measuring cup. This is a 1/2 cup measuring cup. It could be a 1/4 cup. I don't care, because I'm not going to pay any attention to what it says. I'm just using it as a scoop. I'm going to zero that out. That was 150 grams. So in order for that to be 75%, we need 200 grams of bread flour. So 84, 36. Almost. Sometimes with these smaller batches of things, I don't know that these scales read quite the precision you might want them to. There we go, that's close enough. Okay, now, got that, I'm going to pull this off my scale. And just for I don't usually use this, but I will just for the sake of conversation. I'm just going to mix that right up. And that's going to make a fairly sticky dough. And you're not going to need this. You just want to get it well incorporated. Just so you've not got anything that's dry. But that's a fair bit of liquid, so it should come together pretty fast. It'll be a little bit stretchy, and that's fine. That's about what you want. Now I'll go ahead and show you this little trick. One of the things you can do to keep the dough from sticking so badly to your hands is just wet them a little bit. So what I'm going to do with this dough at this point, this is my starter culture again. I'm going to cover this with plastic wrap, and I'm going to leave it sitting on the counter overnight. By in the morning, I should be able to divide it roughly in half. Use half of it to make a batch of bread, and I will feed the other half with basically the same amount that I took out of it, and let it stand on the counter for a few hours and stick it in the fridge until I'm ready to use it again. And so that's step 1. We'll do step 2 tomorrow. Thank you.